Hello and welcome to Time for God from St. Peter's, Bexhill, where we are thinking about Jesus appearing to his disciples. It is still evening of that first Easter Sunday, and the disciples are locked into the upper room, which is their room of fear and despair. The world is shut out and they are shut in. They have lost their Lord and leader. They feel powerless and lifeless. Now, there are probably more than just the 10 remaining disciples in that room. Remember, Judas has died and Thomas is elsewhere. But there are other women and other followers around. So the room is probably quite crowded as the evening closes in, hot and stuffy. And it must have been the worst day of their lives. Think of the worst time in your life when you have felt shut in, powerless, helpless, trapped. If this describes how you have felt at a terrible time, a time when things have gone really badly, read on, because Jesus is present. There is no fuss, no great fanfare, not even this time any angels in white with a message to tell. There is just Jesus, alive and well, showing his hand and his side. It is him. It is the Lord, crucified and risen. And he greets them with the words, "Peace be with you." You might have noticed that I often talk about the language the Bible uses, the hyperbole, the exaggeration to make a point. It is how the Hebrew mind worked. Good things are really good, bad things are really bad. Everything is extreme, nothing is in the middle. It takes us, with our mild, polite English way of talking, a while to get used to it. But now we have what must be the flattest sentence in the Bible, the greatest understatement ever. The King James translation just says, "Then were the disciples glad when they saw the Lord." For many of us, we are so used to the scene, we know the story. But think about what it must have been like the first time. Glad? The people in that room must have been completely blown away. And it turns out blown away is the right phrase, as we shall see. Yes, Mary Magdalene has told them what happened at the tomb early in the morning, but that was Mary, and you know what she's like. And after all, they saw Jesus die. Cleopas and his companion have already started out on the road home to Emmaus. Nothing more is going to happen tonight. But then, here is Jesus. The room must have gone totally silent and then exploded with excitement. The NIV translation does rank the excitement up a bit on the King James. It tells us the disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. I should think so. I think I would be as well. And when the people in that room eventually come to their senses and settle down to hear what Jesus has to say, well, if they think about it at all they can possibly expect from him is a telling off. After all, think of their behaviour on Friday. Most of them ran away. And since then, they've been in hiding. The least they can expect Jesus to say is, "Where were you?" But what they get is quite different. Jesus stands among them and says, "Peace be with you." And again, Jesus says, "Peace be with you." He says it twice. And then he gives them a job to do, an important job. Jesus needs his disciples to continue his work, and he will work in them and with them and through them as they spread his peace over the whole world. And to start this off, Jesus breathes the Holy Spirit on them. Jesus breathes on his disciples. We are meant to read this as part of the big story of the Bible, part of the new creation, the new start. With the resurrection, a new world is dawning, and this is its creation. We are meant to see the link with the creation story back at the start of the Bible. We've already seen this in Mary's story last week. last week to us, but the same day to them. Mary had heard her name spoken by Jesus, and her new life had begun. Jesus had spoken, and things happened. Now, as Jesus breathes life into Adam back in the first creation, so now Jesus breathes new life into his disciples. We are meant to see the link. The Holy Spirit was present at the first creation, and now it is in the power of the Holy Spirit that the disciples are able to go out, to tell friends and strangers, to do God's work in the world, to build his church in the new creation. And we are called to be part of it as well. This new life extends to us. It is the Holy Spirit who equips us for all the work we need to do where we are. We can build his church here and now. But you might be thinking that that is all very well, but what about that bit? If you forgive anyone their sins, they are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven. That sounds very scary. Jesus is giving the power to forgive and not to forgive to his disciples, to us. That sounds very scary. And yes, it is. But after all, if any of us feel we are up to the task of forgiving or not forgiving in God's name, well, we need to go back to school for some very strong lessons in humility. And Jesus is not asking if we would like to do it. He is giving us a command. Some of them must have thought, and we certainly do, but I thought only God can forgive sins. And again, we'd be right. You might think the same thing at the start of just about every service when we have the confession and absolution. But the point is that God is going to forgive sins. The command comes after the crucial promise and gift, receive the Holy Spirit. It is all to do with God, not us. Jesus breathes new life into the disciples, and he breathes everlasting life into us as well, if we let him. And so all of us are called to be Christ to others and see Christ in others. And we can only do this with the help of the Holy Spirit. This part of the story looks forward to Pentecost, of course, when the Holy Spirit comes in very great force and we celebrate the birthday of the church. But the church is not about having spiritual experiences, nor is it to make us a holier-than-thou holy huddle, although we are called to live differently. The point is that we are called to be like Jesus. The key to it all is when Jesus says, "As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." Be like Jesus, he says. Be like me. Thomas has to learn this for himself when he returns a week later. For all the wonderful things that happen in John's Gospel, this encounter is the climax of his story. Thomas turns to Jesus and says, "My Lord and my God." All of John's telling of the story has been heading to this moment. These 5 words, my Lord and my God. We might well be expecting Thomas to be told off for wanting to see and touch Jesus for himself. Instead, Jesus simply says that those who believe without seeing are blessed. Not better, mind you, just blessed. Thomas went on to be a great missionary for Jesus in India, but this is his most famous moment as far as we are concerned, and rightly so. The story in today's reading from the book of Acts shows us an example of how the disciples tried to work out God's calling as they lived among themselves. The details are stark and clear. They shared all they had, and no one went in need. They shared all they had, and no one went in need. Yes, we see elsewhere that the economic life of the early church was generally rather more complicated, but here we are given a picture of resurrection joy and the Holy Spirit working out a new creation way of life. Today, it all makes sense. The abundant life promised by Jesus and enabled by the Holy Spirit is real life, life together, life in abundance. Here it is even presented like a foretaste of the heavenly banquet, prepared for all. Everyone is invited to share. This is the truth that sets us free. The Easter story might feel like the end of everything, but actually, it is just the beginning. Amen.